The United States is experiencing a devastating loneliness crisis, and it's endangering public health. And that's according to a new report from the Surgeon General. I want to share those results with you. Why don't we take a look at the graph here that kind of explains and helps you visualize how much of a problem this has become. So this is the annual daily average in minutes. It's on the y-axis. The report found that since 2003, social isolation increased by 24 hours per month. So this is an ongoing trend. And yes, it increased even more during the pandemic, but it was an ongoing trend before the pandemic. Household family social engagement decreased by 5 hours per month. This one really concerns me. Companionship decreased 14 hours per month. Let's take a look at the next graph. That'll give you some more information here. Social engagement with friends decreased 20 hours per month. In other words, Americans spent about 20 minutes a day in person with friends in 2020, and that was down from 60 minutes daily nearly 2 decades earlier. But again, I mean, you could say, oh, it's the pandemic that caused this, but it's not. You can see that it was trending downward well before the pandemic.
Yeah, it also looks like that's a decrease of 40 hours rather than 20, but it's been a while since I took a stats class. Maybe I'm confusing myself.
Yeah, don't trip me up here, okay?
Apologies.
All right. Also, non-household family social engagement decreased 6.5 hours, and social engagement with others decreased 10 hours per month. And so the loneliness epidemic, if you're wondering who's being impacted by this the most, is actually hitting young people ages 15 to 24 especially hard. The age group reported a 70% drop in time spent with friends during the same period. So we'll talk about causes and what the health ramifications are in just a moment. But John, I'm really curious what you think about this. I know that you have acknowledged that the loneliness crisis exists. What do you think is behind it?
Well, look, I mean, especially if you're talking about a more than 20-year period, then it's going to be a lot of stuff being behind it. I think, particularly when you talk about affecting young people, and when we're not just constraining ourselves to the time of the pandemic, then it's almost certainly a lot of it is going to be technology. I think that's pretty clear, which is also why I would wonder, I would love to define more closely a few things that they're talking about. So like when they talk about companionship, that's shared time spent pursuing intrinsic satisfaction. Do they include pets in that? Because that can still be, that can increase intrinsic safication.
Definitely.
But also like when they say that people between like 15 and 20 or whatever have dropped 70%, then I find it very easy to believe that yes, okay, they're probably spending 70% less time going to the mall, going to the movies, stuff like that. But are they playing online games? Are they communicating? Like that can still be companionship. I don't know that it's the same necessarily. And I think there are a lot of reasons to be worried about the numbers that we're seeing. But it could also be that companionship and shared time is not just a thing of it going up or down in amount, but changing in how exactly you do it.
Yes, changing in form, right? So I think you make a good point. So if
I play card games with my friends online and we're on Discord talking over voice chat, it's not the same as being around a table, but it's sustained our friendship for like 12 years since we've lived near each other.
So look, you bring up a good point, but while that might not be conducive to loneliness, I do also worry about some of the impacts of that as well, right? Like the ability to pick up on social cues, the ability to have a conversation with a person for the first time in a public setting. You get what I'm saying? Like those things. That's why apps are now using AI technology to communicate, to converse with your matches on these dating apps, right?
Isn't that amazing? Like the issue is that we're not spending enough time in real life with each other, and it's difficult to meet people. So instead we turn to an app to meet people, and then it's just 2 robots talking to each other.
Yeah, it's kind of dystopian, no?
Yeah, look, I think that this is the sort of thing that in theory you could turn around. I mean, I definitely think, look, this is again going over many, many years, but there's more than there was a year into the pandemic, but there's still less people working in close proximity. That's not your family member, it's not necessarily your best friend, but it is still a form of companionship. I think it can help to stop loneliness when you're around people with some sort of shared mission or whatever. So I think you could throw that into the list of many, many contributing factors. But I also think that you can theoretically turn this around. Like, sometimes things that are sort of retro come back, maybe hanging out in person. It's one of the reasons I play board games as much as I do. I go to board game meetups because it's people around a table.
Can I admit something? And if you had said to me back in 2016 that 2023 Anna was about to say what I'm about to say, I would be shocked. I kind of want to do live shows because I want to meet our viewers in person. I want to connect with them on a more.
Shook its head.
No, I definitely
totally agree. I was lucky enough to be able to do one with Francesca at San Francisco Sketch Fest earlier this year, and it was incredible.
Yeah.
Because look, it's just you're there. But all I'm seeing is glass. And we spend a lot of our time looking at reflective glass.
But you get to learn about us. But I want to learn about you. Anyway.
Yeah, it's kind of selfish of you guys when you think about it.
So selfish.
But anyway, it's one of the reasons we read a lot more comments than we did before the pandemic, I think.
That's true, I think so as well. And we get a lot more comments than we did before the pandemic, at least it feels like it. Okay, so let's get to some more details from the findings here. So Dr. Murphy writes that about half of US adults also have experienced loneliness, a number that's been exacerbated by the coronavirus pandemic. That makes a lot of sense. And of course, one of the factors is technology and how that contributes to loneliness. One study cited in the report found that people who use social media for 2 hours or more daily were more than twice as likely to report feeling socially isolated than those who were on such apps for less than 30 minutes a day.
That's fascinating.
And I gotta say, I'm not on those apps.
Yeah, but
a lot at all these days at all, and I don't feel lonely.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of different ways to interpret that data, though. It is possible that just they're on it, they feel lonely. It's possible that they would feel less lonely even if their life is exactly the same if they weren't on the apps. That it's not about the friendships or the relationships, it's just that they are feeling like the artificial competition. It's also possible that people that feel social loneliness are then turning to apps to fill that void and finding that it doesn't actually work. It's possible that they're actually correlated rather than one being causal.
You're coming in with all your methodology talk.
No, but
I like that you're doing it because you're right.
It's still a problem.
Those are really good points, though, and I think that in order to address the problem, you have to accurately identify what the causes are. So I like that you're mentioning all these things, but where I'm the most skeptical or would like to see a little more detail, a little more elaboration, is how this translates to physical health issues, right? So let's take a look at this graph that shows how lacking social connection is allegedly as dangerous as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. I don't know if I believe that. I'm just keeping it honest and real with you guys. How is that as dangerous as smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day?
I mean, look, they're saying odds of premature mortality, which is as general a term of you died early as possible. I don't think they're saying it literally like curdle your lungs.
No, I get that, but it
think about the
shortens
people,
your life.
Well, think about the people who are married for 60 years and then one of them dies and then the other passes away a month later.
I don't want to think about that.
Like
I don't want to think about that.
The body can't survive if the will isn't there.
How about the fact that we have immense pain and suffering to look forward to in our later life?
Speak for yourself.
Oh God.
Taking care of my body.
I really hope I go first. Okay, I don't know. Anyway.
I want to preserve life as long as possible, which is why I eat so many preservatives. I'm gonna last as long as a Twinkie.
Did you have a Pop-Tart today?
I have not had a Pop-Tart today, but the day's still young.
So let's give you more details on it. So loneliness increases the risk of premature death by 30%, with the report revealing that those with poor social relationships also had a greater risk of stroke and heart disease. Isolation also elevates a person's likelihood of experiencing depression, anxiety, and dementia. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Right, because look, I know that when I'm going through a tough time, whether it's at work or with my family, whatever it is, what makes me feel better, what lowers my stress is sharing a glass of wine with my best friend, having a conversation with her. I'm guessing that stress increases cortisol levels. Cortisol translates to lack of sleep, eating unhealthy, like your body craves like terrible foods when cortisol spikes. And so maybe that's what's going on here. I just want to understand it a little better. I believe it, I just want to understand it a little better.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of issues, definitely.
So hang out with your friends, go out for a cup of coffee, have a conversation with someone you don't know. I don't know if those meetup websites still exist.
I'm assuming they do.
I think they do.
Yeah, look,
Make
I do
new
think
friends.
I think the solution has to be multifaceted. I think that there have been a lot of factors that could potentially.
You're right. This is the thing I wanted to say. I can't believe I forgot to say this. We're working too much as well, right? So like having super long work days makes people exhausted and then they end up going home and they don't want to do anything else. It's really hard to be social when you're overworked. So I think we need to address that. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're totally right. I think, look, a 3-day weekend, this is another thing that I think it would be very beneficial for. But also I think it's a couple attached issues. I think that people who theoretically have family and friend relationships that they could be leaning on more, I think there have been influences that have led to us doing less of it. I think you just listed one. Theoretically, if people get home and they're exhausted and just want to watch TV, and now there is way more that you can do solo. Sometimes people will do the easy thing, even if that doesn't lead to long-term happiness. But then there's also a lot of people who just don't have friends, because I think there's a lot of things about the modern world that make it more difficult. A lot of people maybe have to move for work. Look, there's a lot of things that can make it. So I think that the solutions, I think there can be some social stuff to incentivize spending more time with the friends and other connections that you have, but then also trying to make it a little bit easier to provide opportunities for people to make new connections.
I think that's such a great point, and I concur wholeheartedly.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, we really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.